Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Cornish Metals investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab that's just situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company can review all questions submitted today and will publish those responses where it's appropriate to do so on the Investor Meet Company platform. And before we begin, I would just like to submit the following poll, and if you'd give that your kind attention, I'm sure the company would be most grateful. And I would now like to hand you over to the executive management team from Cornish Metals. Fazi, good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Jake. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today on this Cornish Metals 2024 Preliminary Economic Assessment presentation call. I'm Fazi Hanano, Chief Development Officer at Cornish Metals, and joining me today are Ken Armstrong, Interim Chief Executive Officer, Owen Mylop, Chief Operating Officer, and Matthew Hurd, Chief Financial Officer. Since you're here on the call, you'd be aware that this morning Cornish Metals announced the results of the preliminary economic assessment for the 100% owned and permitted South Crofty Tin Project located in Cornwall, United Kingdom. We believe that the PEA results validate South Crofty's potential economic viability, producing a base case net present value of $201 million at an 8% discount rate and an internal rate of return of just under 30%. It also confirms the project's potential to be a low-cost and long-life tin mining operation with a current 14-year life of mine. The purpose of this presentation is to take you through the PEA, what it means for the project and the company, and to answer your questions. As such, we'll be making some forward-looking statements relating to the company and the project, so please be aware of the cautionary language which is in this presentation, and the presentation has been posted to our website. With that, I'm going to hand things over now to Ken to make some brief remarks, and then we will move on to Owen, who will take you through the PEA results, after which there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions to the team. So please submit your questions. And Ken, over to you.
Great, thanks, Fauzi, and thank you all for attending this presentation of Cornish Metals South Crofty Tin Project Preliminary Economic Assessment. I want to start by thanking Owen and his project team at South Crofty, not just for their work in completing this PEA, but the long hours spent on the studies and the developments that underpin this important assessment of the South Crofty Tin Project. Today's PEA represents our first opportunity to wrap economics around the project, taking into account the developments over the last couple of years since the cornerstone investment made by Vision Blue Resources in the company. That work included the updated fall 2023 resource estimate that focused on the higher grade tin-only mineralization in the project's lower mine resource, as well as important ore sorting and metallurgical test work, proof of concept directional drilling results, construction and ongoing operations of a water treatment plant, and commencement of mine dewatering and shaft refurbishment work on the property. As Fauzi mentioned, Owen's going to take you through the details and the numbers behind the PEA, but first I'd like to take a high-level look at the PEA results and highlight our view that South Crofty is not your typical greenfield PEA stage project, and why we think it has the potential to be an important source of primary mine tin at a time of declining or uncertain tin supply and increasing tin demand that is required to meet the needs of the global energy transition and electrification. So to start, South Crofty is 100% owned by Cornish Metals. It's located in the historic mining district of Cornwall here in the United Kingdom. Cornwall is one of the type localities for hard rock tin mineralization, with the South Crofty area having had over 400 years of continuous mining history that ended in 1998 after the tin price collapsed in the 1980s. It's in large part because of this history that we believe South Crofty is well advanced in a number of areas and has cleared a number of the hurdles that most PEA stage projects have not yet reached. The mining history means that we understand the mineralization styles that we're seeing, we understand the ground conditions and the metallurgy, and it's also why we have some important mine infrastructure already in place, including 5 mine shafts that access historical workings within South Crofty's current resource. The project has a mine permit already in place that's good through to 2071 and has permission to construct a process plant facility on land that we own next to the primary shaft that's called New Cook's Kitchen. So the permitting risk of this project is already behind us. The project is located within an industrial area, so there's excellent transportation and renewable power infrastructure in the immediate area. And most importantly, the project benefits from local community and government support, for the development of the project and bringing responsible tin mining back to Cornwall. So with all this in mind, and as outlined in this morning's news release, we think that the results of the PEA are robust and validate the project's potential to become a domestic supply of primary mined tin to the UK and European markets. And as Fauzi highlighted, the study has returned an after-tax net present value at an 8% discount of just over $200 million, an after-tax internal rate of return of about 30%, both at our base case tin price of $31,000 a ton. The project requires about $177 million in initial capital and has an after-tax payback period of about 3 years. The project will be an important tin producer, producing over 49,000 tons of tin in concentrate over a 14-year life of mine, and will pay over £100 million in corporate taxes to the governments in the United Kingdom. And of course, there'll also be important income taxes and health taxes on top of that for the employees that are working at the mine. As mentioned, Owen's going to take you through the background on these numbers, but I'd like to focus on one metric that we believe is tremendously important in terms of evaluating the potential of South Crofty to be a long life mine. And that's the all-in sustaining cost per ton of recoverable tin of $13,700 over life of mine, which is well under half of our base case tin price of $31,000 and confirms that South Crofty is well positioned to be a low-cost primary tin producer. But what I'd really like to focus on, and what I'd like to ask you to keep in mind as you take these results in from the PEA, is the first 6 years of production, which has an all-in sustaining cost of around $12,400 as a result of mining the higher grade tin-only mineralization in the lower mine resource. You can see that the cash flow generated in the early years averages about $65 million annually. So 1 year's cash flow is essentially what our current market capitalization is. And this higher grade tin mineralization in the lower mine has always been the prize for getting South Crofty dewatered and back into production. It was these lower areas of the mine that kept South Crofty in production up till 1998 for a period of over 10 years after the tin price collapsed in the 1980s, when tin prices were consistently well under $5,000 a ton. Based on our understanding of the tin mineralization in these lodes, we believe significant additional mineralization can be identified in the lower mine, and it's always been our intent to extend South Crofty's mine life by defining more tin-only mineralization in this area. We intend to do this through delineation and exploration drilling once the mine is fully dewatered in 2025, with the goal to add resources in the lower mine to replace the early years of production and push the later years of production that are currently incorporated in the PEA outwards into the future. So with those very forward-looking statements having been made, I'm going to pass things over to Owen to take you through the PEA in more detail. Owen?
Thanks, Ken, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to take everyone through a slightly more detailed overview of the PEA. But first, I'd like to acknowledge and thank my team at site, led by Steve Holly, our study manager, as well as all the engineers and consultants that have contributed to what we believe is a detailed, high-quality study. These include AMC, who are responsible for the mineral resource estimate, as well as being the overall project consultant, NTEC for the underground mine design and scheduling, Wardell Armstrong, who undertook all the metallurgical test work, and Fairport Engineering for the process plant design, both completed under the supervision of Mike Halliwell, our independent metallurgical consultant, who spent many years at both Wheel Jane and South Crofty, operating the process plants that we have based our designs upon. SLR also helped us on the project on the environmental permitting and closure planning side, and Patterson and Cook have designed the backfill plant and underground backfilling system. So some of the basic but important numbers for the project include a planned production rate of 500,000 tons per year mined at an average grade of just under 1% tin, and 250,000 tons per year milled or processed at an average grade of around 1.8% tin. So this discrepancy between the mined and processed tons is due to pre-concentration technology that we plan to use, which I'll discuss in a bit more detail as we go through the presentation. Overall, the study indicates that we can produce just under 50,000 tons of tin metal in concentrate over the 14-year mine life at an average overall metallurgical recovery of around 88%. The pre-production capital costs are in the order of $177 million US, with a further $54 million sustaining capex over the mine life, This mainly comprises capitalized development of the underground mine, but it also includes a process plant upgrade in year 4 of production, which will enable us to process polymetallic material located in the upper mine, which results in a small amount of copper and zinc produced in the second half of the mine life. And importantly, with low cash costs of approximately $12,700 per ton of payable tin, we see a good rate of return of around 30% after tax and a payback of just 3 years. So, as Ken mentioned, South Crofty will be an important producer of tin with just over 49,000 tons of tin metal produced in concentrate. And this slide shows the production profile over the 14-year mine life. Of note, you can see the light grey bars representing the annual mine production of around 500,000 tons per year. The dark grey bars representing the material processed, on average 250,000 tons per year. The tin produced is represented by the orange line. Of note is the tin production in years 2 to 6, which averages 4,700 tons of metal in concentrate each year. And the grey and brown lines represent the copper and zinc production from the upper mine after the plant upgrade in year 4. So on this slide, we're looking at the mineral resources, and the mineral resource really underpins the whole of the PEA study. The study is based on the 2023 mineral resource estimate produced for us by AMC, and that was a really important piece of work as it increased the contained tin in the indicated category of the lower mine by 30%. This increase is one of the reasons we are confident that additional drilling of the lower mine area will result in additional mineralization being identified and potentially added to the mine plan once we are fully dewatered and able to drill at depth. The main image on the right-hand side is a plan view of the mineralized veins, or lodes as we tend to call them in Cornwall, and these are what make up the mineral resource. For scale, the strike extent of the resource is around 3.5 kilometers from the top east-northeast corner down to the west-southwest corner. And from north to south, it's around 1 kilometer. So it's a large area that is covered by the mineral resource. The lower right-hand image is a long section and shows why we are confident in the potential to materially increase the mineral resource once we are underground and able to drill. The polymetallic copper-rich workings are represented by the gold colored workings at the top, and they overlie the tin mineralization, which is the silver resource at depth in the middle of the image, and that the extent of the copper workings above gives us confidence that the lower mine tin workings are all open along strike and at depth, and that's where the increase in the mineral resource will come from. In terms of the mine design, this was developed for us by NTEC Mining Engineering Consultants. The mine design and schedule were developed using industry standard DESWIC mine planning software and based on using a modern mechanized trackless fleet of mining equipment. The mine design is built around the 2023 mineral resource estimate. The first stage was applying a mineable stope optimizer to select the mineralized material above the economic cutoff grade of 0.4% tin. The development required to access all the mineable stopes was then designed, and finally a mine schedule was developed that takes into account the required mining sequence and the achievable development rates. The primary access point for the movement of people, materials, and rock hoisting is New Cook's Kitchen shaft, right in the center of the mine, with Rossgear, Taylor's, and Palmer's shaft also used for ventilation, and Rossgear shaft also provides us with a secondary egress as well. In terms of mineral processing, as we disclose quite often, in addition to our mine permit, we also have permission to construct a processing plant on land immediately adjacent to New Cook's Kitchen shaft. The process plant is designed to have a low visual impact and is set into the hillside, which not only reduces the visible height above ground, but helps to reduce noise and vibration from the equipment contained within the plant itself. The process flow sheet is based on a combination of the old South Crofty and Wheel Jane flow sheets and incorporates pre-concentration in the form of XRT or X-ray transmission ore sorting and DMS or dense media separation. The primary crushing actually takes place underground, but the rock entering the plant is further crushed and screened into 3 size fractions. Material between 15 and 50 millimeters goes through the XRT ore sorter. Material between 1 and 15 millimeters goes through the dense media separation circuit, and material less than 1 millimeter will bypass the sorting and go straight into the concentrator plant. The concentrator itself incorporates sequential rod milling and ball milling to progressively reduce particle size and enable recovery of tin by gravity between each stage of milling. The gravity recovery equipment involves the use of spirals, shaking tables, and multi-gravity separators, all of which are manufactured by local companies in Cornwall. And then finally, we have an ultra-fine gravity recovery circuit using Falcon concentrators. Our test work shows that we can produce a clean, commercial saleable concentrate, low in penalty elements with grades in the range of 58 to 60% tin. From year 4, we will add a flotation circuit to recover copper and zinc found in the polymetallic upper mine. It's worth noting that the plant design, particularly the civil engineering part of it, is one of the parts of the project that's still at PEA level, and this is reflected in the 20% contingency applied to our cost estimates. So a little bit more about that ore sorting, the technology that we're employing. As this graph shows you, the ore sorting is really important to increase the grade of the material entering the concentrator versus the mine grade. By only processing half the material mined with minimal metal loss, the project will benefit from much reduced capital and operating costs through a smaller concentrator. XRT test work conducted by Tomra, the manufacturer of the sorting equipment, demonstrates we can reject 55% of the mass for less than 3% metal loss, and heavy liquid test work undertaken by Wardell Armstrong has demonstrated that the dense media separator will reject around 50% of its mass with less than a 5% loss of metal. Our test work also shows that the higher the grade of material entering the gravity concentrator, the higher the overall recovery of the material of metal will be, with an average of around 88% overall recovery of tin from run of mine through to the final concentrate. So on to backfill. A key reason we can limit the footprint and impact of South Crofty is our plan to take advantage of the extensive existing underground void space left by historic mining operations. And this will enable us to store our processing tailings back underground. This will be done by way of a paste backfill plant, which is currently being developed to a concept level by Patterson and Cook. Again, this is an area of the study where the level of engineering is still at PEA stage, but we are currently performing further test work to engineer the plant to feasibility level. However, the cost of the backfill plant and underground backfilling system will be substantially lower than a surface tailings facility, will limit future liabilities, and importantly, not take up valuable space on surface, thereby lowering the visual and environmental impact of the operations. So this leads me on to my final slide. We believe that the ability of the project to be planned without surface tailings is one of the factors that has helped us attract such strong local support for the redevelopment of South Crofty. We've worked hard on our community engagement and take our commitments to the local community and environment very seriously. Part of this is being realistic in our stated timeframes and the risks associated with the project. We think that honesty is extremely important. We've planned the project, including the PEA, on the basis of utilizing 100% renewable energy through the use of renewable energy guaranteed origin electrical power, and also biodiesel or HVO for all the underground mining equipment. It's worth noting we've already incorporated a small renewable energy project through the installation of a hydro turbine to generate power through the discharge of treated water from our water treatment plant. We're also seeing opportunities for solar power. You've probably noticed on some of the renderings that we've got solar panels on all the roofs of all the buildings. And we're also intending to extract heat from the water that we pump out of the mine, which is a constant 24 degrees Celsius. Another key part of our community engagement is the fact that the project could generate over 300 direct, highly skilled, high-paying jobs and approximately another 1,000 indirect jobs. Even at present, the team at site consists of over 60 employees, all of whom are local residents of Cornwall, with most living within a 15-minute commute of the mine. This is the best kind of community engagement, where our own employees live in the community, attend local schools and community events as proof of the direct benefit a redeveloped South Crofty mine can bring. I'll now hand you back to Ken to talk through the next few slides.
Thanks, Owen. So as I mentioned, completion of the PEA has been achieved using the funding that was provided by our Spring 22 cornerstone investment. It was led by Vision Blue Resources, and we've achieved a lot over the last couple of years. That work has included, obviously, completion of the mineral resource estimate that we spoke to, with a 32% increase in contained tin, construction and commissioning and operations now of the water treatment plant, which is operating very well. Dewatering of the South Crofty mine is underway, along with refurbishment of the new cook's kitchen shaft, the metallurgical work, installation and certification of the winders and cages that have enabling the refurbishment work that's underway, as well as exploration drilling on the wide formation that's currently underway. But we do have some important near-term priorities for the project, including continuing with the mine dewatering and refurbishment of the new cook's kitchen shaft. We will also continue with our work to complete all of the mine planning studies and estimates to a feasibility study level, with the important final pieces, as Owen mentioned, being the paste backfill plant and the process plant design studies. After completion of exploration drilling of the wide formation this spring, we expect to continue with additional exploration drilling there, and also some element of drilling to expand the mineralized envelope in the lower mine, particularly in the raw skier area of the lower mine, which is the area that was mined almost exclusively over the last 10 years of operations before South Crofty closed in 1998. In terms of timelines, we'll continue, as I mentioned, with the dewatering and refurbishment, and have plans this year to commence some early works activities on with respect to the process plant, as well as the long lead items such as the main winders for new cook's kitchen shaft. We expect to complete the dewatering and shaft refurbishment by the third quarter of 2025, at which point we can commence resource drilling at depth, and ideally at which point we will reach a construction decision for the project. A number of these streams can and are running in parallel with each other, and we'll continue to explore ways to advance quickly with the goal of tin production in 2027 possible, with appropriate funding and completion of these early works activities. So we're almost through things, but I'm going to pass over to Fauzi so that he can say a few words on tin, which is certainly topical at the moment, but is admittedly not as well understood as some of the major base metals are. So Fauzi.
Thank you, Ken. So just a few words on tin. So tin is a commodity that doesn't receive the attention that it deserves, particularly in comparison to other base metals such as copper. But looking at the chart on the top left, it indicates that tin has shown some resilience against other base metals from 2023 onwards. As well, if we look year to date, tin has significantly outperformed its peers, reflecting tight market fundamentals, which mainly has been driven by disruptions on the supply side. Now, looking generally at tin, the energy transition is going to be the biggest long-term demand driver for tin, and tin is a commodity that may be most impacted by new technology because of its use across the spectrum of anything electronic. While tin is used in small quantities, if there's an electrical connection, tin is used, which defines why tin is essential in modern day living. Looking at the chart on the top right, it shows the end uses for tin, where solder makes up close to 50% of all end uses. So as I was just saying before, if there is an electrical connection, then tin is used, and that's why it is quite essential. But tin is also used in other applications, such as in renewables, so for solar panels, as an example, as well as in batteries, EVs. So there are multiple applications which will be driven by the energy transition over the coming decades. Tin has been defined as a critical metal by the UK, USA, Canada, as well as other countries. But security of supply is very important because there is no primary tin mine production in Europe or North America. So that makes South Crofty an excellent opportunity to provide some local production of tin. Market fundamentals are strong, and we expect them to support the tin price in the medium to long term. And the expectation is that tin demand will grow by about 30% in the decade to 2034. And that would cause deficits to emerge from later this decade and a supply deficit as well. That being the case, we are quite positive in the fundamentals of tin. And with that, back to you, Ken, for closing remarks.
Thanks, Fawzi. In terms of a summary, I think we've well covered the numbers and bullets that are on this slide. South Crofty is unique. It's much more advanced than a typical PEA stage project, with a real opportunity to take advantage of the existing mine permits and mine infrastructure to get into production in the near term. In closing, I do want to thank our neighbors and local stakeholders in the Camborne, Poole, and Redruth area and the surrounding regions in Cornwall for their strong support for the redevelopment of South Crofty. Today's PEA is an important next step in our evaluation of the project and bring us that much closer to realizing our goal of bringing responsible tin mining back to Cornwall and the United Kingdom. We still obviously have much more work to do to get the project to a construction decision, but today's PEA provides a solid endorsement of the project and our thesis that the United Kingdom can once again be an important source of tin to global markets at a time when the metal is needed more than ever as part of global electrification and the transition of our energy sectors. So stay tuned for next steps on the project, and I think I'll hand it back over to Jake, our operator, and we can open the floor for questions.
Perfect. That's great. Ken, Fawzi, Owen, Matthew, thank you very much indeed for your presentation this afternoon. I will just bring back up your camera there now. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab that's situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the company take a few moments to review those questions that were submitted already, I would like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Fawzi, as you can see there in the Q&A tab, we have received a number of questions throughout your presentation this afternoon, and thank you to all of those on the call for taking the time to submit their questions. But Fawzi, at this stage, sir, if I may now just hand back to you just to chair the Q&A with the team, and then I'll pick up from you at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. So we'll start with the first question that we've received, asking us to outline some of the main differences between the 2017 PEA and the current PEA that we announced this morning, and giving an estimate on the impact on valuation.
Yeah, well, I think in the main difference between this PEA and the last one is the increase in size of the mineral resource since 2017. But also in the 2017 study, we weren't looking at a fully trackless mining operation. And this time, we have gone back and redesigned the entire mine from first principles to use trackless modern mining methods, which I think is really important going forward.
Thank you, Owen. On to the next question. It says that roughly 31% of the contained tin in the lower mine resource has not been included in the PEA mine plan. Is that due to it being sub-economic or lack of drilling data?
So from when we go from mineral resource to the mine stopes that we designed with the MSO, we get around a 80% transition of resource into the MSO. So the majority is included. The reasons for not including parts of the resource would probably be proximity to previously mined areas of the mine, as well as actual distance from the core infrastructure within the mine. So some of the more distal stopes did not make it through to the final mine design.
And the next question is asking about technologies such as XRT and DMS and their proven effectiveness in similar mining operations.
Yeah. So again, the reason we went to TOMRA to do the test work and look at XRT is because there are two other tin mines, Renison Bell in Tasmania and San Rafael in Peru that both successfully use the TOMRA XRT technology. In fact, San Rafael is really very analogous to the ore that we have at South Crofty, so it's a direct comparator, and the test work that we've done with TOMRA has demonstrated that.
Thank you. On to the next question, which is more on financing, and is asking what are the plans in terms of financing, and will this be something to be dealt with in short term or longer, or medium or long term, and is the company in regular contact with our strategic investor, Vision Blue Resources? I'll pass on to Matthew for the first part of this question.
For the first part of the question, as Ken mentioned, we'll be looking to make an investment decision, construction decision, at the end of 2025. At that time, we will look to put in place a package of project finance, and that will entail probably a components of debt, equity, possibly offtake financing. We're talking to a number of providers of debt and equity at the moment. Obviously, we're not in a position to sort of talk about the details of that, but we're keeping all the options available on the table, and we will announce something when we've agreed something with either a debt provider or equity provider or another form of finance.
And with regards to the second part of the question, we are in regular contact with our main investor, Vision Blue Resources. They are a very supportive investor, and we're very happy to have them as on our register. Next question asking what will be the incremental capex required and when will it be incurred?
Well, we start to incur the main capex when the construction decision is taken. The bulk of the capex goes into developing the underground mine and also building that surface processing and paste backfill facilities.
What efforts is Cornish Metals making to fast track the project into production?
From an operational point of view, we've got a number of early works that we're concentrating on. The groundworks and civils for the processing plant is considered an early work item because we recognise that as being a critical path, and also dewatering of the mine, refurbishing of New Cook's kitchen shaft, which is underway, is a high priority critical path item that we are already working on, and we will continue that by re-equipping the surface winders. The production surface winders come in at a very early stage so that we can continue all the way through the project we can work on the critical path of the mine development.
I think so a number that we talked about on that stream of the activities that we have underway, a number of them are happening in parallel. So again, it's because of the existing infrastructure, we can really take advantage of that to continue to be opportunistic in how we advance the project. And it also then ties into the question on financing. And we're looking at ways continually how to get this into production as soon as we can. And the most important thing is getting the mine dewatered and safely refurbished, and then that really opens the door for us to start fast tracking things.
Next question asking if the capex of $177 million is incremental to what has already been incurred. Yes, that is correct. It is incremental to some costs. Another question asking if the firm is actively recruiting for a new chief executive officer.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm here in an interim role, and there is a process that's underway. We're looking at candidates, and we're going to get that process completed as quickly as we can. But that said, part of having my involvement here and with the remainder of the board, we're fully supportive. We have a team in place with Owen and Fauzi and Matthew and the technical team at site, and the most important thing is to ensure that they're supported so they can execute on the project, which is clearly still happening with things like delivery of the PEA today. And that remains the focus of everybody involved.
Thank you. We have a few questions on the water treatment plant and the current dewatering. Question here asks if there is any water inflow from other mines in the region or neighboring mines, and also if the water treatment plant is currently operating at full capacity?
Yeah, so there's no water inflow from anything other than the South Crofty workings that were dewatered and operating in 1998. All of the historic mines around South Crofty that were flooded when the mine was in operation remain flooded today. We regularly monitor all of the shafts, open shafts in the area that access some of those historic mines, and the water levels have not moved as we expected in those historic mines.
Another technical question with regards to the pre-concentration, asking how far do the X-rays and the XRT look into the ore, and is it possible to turn up the XRT power to improve on the process?
Yep, so we've followed, I don't know exactly how far those X-rays look into the pieces of ore, but we've followed TOMRA's recommendations on the particle size that we should be crushing to. And yes, the X-ray strength and the algorithm that the machine uses to determine what is ore and what is waste can be varied so that you can vary the recovery and the rejection rate of the machine. So the test work that we've shown is what we think is close to optimal, but in an operational scenario there is flexibility around that.
Question on the sale of the tin concentrate and if we expect to get a premium for the high tin grade concentrate. I'll take that question. In our current PEA modeling, we are not assuming any premium for the tin concentrate, but that is something that could present upside given security, the requirement for security of supply for tin concentrate being produced in the UK. But currently, we're not including that in our base case. Question with regards to the mine of how deep will the mine go and how deep do the tin veins go?
So at the moment, the deepest point of the mine is 870 meters below the collar of New Cook's Kitchen shaft. And we have very limited information below that, as our mineral resource is primarily based on historic data. But we're very confident that the tin veins extend beneath that. But until we get down there and test them, we can't say for sure how deep they go. But there's no reason to suspect that that they stop at the level that they stopped at in 1998.
And I think also worth pointing out with the exploration drilling we're doing right now on the wide formation, one of the reasons that exploration target is being drilled is if it is there and there's significant mineralization that we can turn into a resource, it would be accessible from the existing mine workings and the existing mine infrastructure. And for the most part, it sits already within our mine permission area.
A couple of last technical questions with regards to our confidence in the use of long hole stoping as a mining technique, as well as if the mine will be completely trackless.
Yep, so the mine will be completely trackless. And in terms of the long hole stoping technique, yes, we're very confident in that. During the second half of the 1980s and throughout the 1990s, around 80% of production from South Crofty came through long hole stoping. And in fact, narrow vein long holing was pioneered at South Crofty in the 1970s. So we have every reason to believe that it will continue to work, and we're using effectively the same mining method. We're just mechanizing it and making it trackless to make it more efficient.
Moving on to the tin market, question asking if new AI data centers will drive new demand for tin, or will it be from solar panel production? Well, in our view, it's going to be from both in terms of additional AI data centers, data processing, data storage. That's going to drive increasing demand for chips, which are all going to require solder. So tin demand. Additionally, we expect solar panel, the use of solar ribbon, which is a tin copper alloy, to be increasing as we see more deployment of solar panels worldwide. But there's also additional demand drivers, whether it be from the expected use of tin in lithium-ion batteries, where currently there isn't any. That could potentially, in the next 10 years, become a 7% of total end-use demand for tin, so quite significant potential demand driver from that alone as well. On the supply side, a few questions here. Firstly, asking if there are other new tin mines planned in the world. Well, the answer is yes. There's always a number of new mines in all commodities that are planned. I guess the question would be really which are viable to come online in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And South Crofty's differentiator to other tin mine projects is the potential proximity to production, given the fact that this is brownfield, it's a restart, and that it is a permitted project with existing infrastructure. Other potential tin supply mostly will be earlier stage greenfield in less friendly jurisdictions. So that's why we believe that tin demand will outstrip supply, especially when looking in the 5, 10 years and beyond. A bit more focus looking at the current disruptions, asking with regards to the state of Myanmar in Myanmar, what's currently happening there. So the Myanmar government suspended mining in the Myanmar area back in August, September of last year. And up until now, we haven't seen a restart. When you came into the beginning of this year, the expectation was that we'll see a restart potentially after the Chinese Lunar New Year, and that has not happened. And actually, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen the ban being reaffirmed. So there's still uncertainty around when Myanmar will come back into production. And Myanmar is quite important because it is a top 3 supplier of mined tin in the world. Follow-up question is if Indonesia can ramp up tin production again. I'd have my doubts, and I think many people would agree with that. Currently, Indonesia has faced some disruption. There's been a change in the permitting process for exports of tin from being an annual to a 3-year process, and that's caused almost no tin at all to be exported in the first few months of this year. We've seen that recover since March, but there's always risk, we believe, towards Indonesian tin exports, especially following the election of the newest president who's taking office, I believe, in the current month, where we could see the potential for further downstreaming of tin, where currently only tin metal that's been smelted in country is exported, or we could see potential for that to go even further downstream towards potentially the production of solder. So that could pose some risk short term, at the very least, short to medium term, in terms of tin exports from Indonesia. But also looking at the Indonesian production over the last few years, it has been on a declining path as grades have been declining and miners having to move further offshore to do the mining. So that also has been impacting the overall production. Just going through the latest questions that have come by. First, where with the mine dewatering, where is the water going after being treated?
So the water is the treated water is discharged into the Red River via an adit. There is an adit from the mine site that takes the water 2 kilometers to the north of Camborne to a place called Roscrogan, where it enters the Red River, and the quality of that water that we discharge is better than the actual quality of the water in the river.
Thank you. The next question with regards to the new cook's kitchen shaft, asking if the capacity is limited to 500,000 tons per year, and if that is the limiting factor on annual production rates.
So no, the sort of full capacity of the shaft is just over 1 million tons per year if we were to hoist 24/7. So it's not a limiting factor on production. The actual tonnage is, if we include waste rock that we will be hoisting as well, at peak production we're hoisting around 700,000 tons a year, but it's not at the capacity. The shaft is not limiting that capacity.
There's a question on I guess the sequencing, asking if a feasibility study will be produced between now and a construction decision, if it is funded, and if it requires the dewatering to be completed before completing.
One thing. talk to that. So a feasibility study, we will have, as Owen mentioned, most of the mining components are already at a feasibility study level. There's more work to do on a few more of those work streams. So our current plan is to get the mine plan to feasibility study level, but as we sort of disclosed all along, we need to do more drilling in order to upgrade and convert the resource. It's part of the reason why we presented where the project's at right now in the form of a PEA, to be able to wrap economics around the project as a whole. And that kind of feeds to how we have a number of these streams that are working in parallel, doing the early earthworks in anticipation of a construction decision. At the same time, trying to get going on drilling as soon as we can. We absolutely do need to get the dewatering completed and the shaft refurbishment in order to get underground and get some of that conversion drilling done. And that drilling program is not part of the current funding that we have.
The next question asks, at what point in the dewatering would it be sufficient to get underground and do more drilling at depth?
So I think really until we're well below the 195 fathom pump station, we can't realistically get underground to do any drilling. So it'll be in the second half of 2025 before we're in a position to drill from underground.
Question: if there is lithium in the mine waters and if these are to be recovered?
It's from the analysis of the raw mine water that we're pumping, there's a very small amount of lithium, around 18 parts per million. But I don't believe that is enough to warrant any kind of extraction.
And on to our final question: do we have a predicted value per share in the future? We don't speculate on our share price in looking forward, but what we've done today is go over the merits of the preliminary economic assessment that was produced for the South Crofty project, producing a $201 million US dollar after-tax NPV. That could be taken as a guide for where we are right now, but we wouldn't guesstimate as to where the share price should be. I believe we've exhausted all the questions that have come through. Thank you very much, everyone, for the questions. And with that, I'll turn over to Ken with some final closing remarks.
Yeah, thanks, Fauzi, and thanks everybody for listening into this presentation of the preliminary economic assessment of the South Crofty Tin Project. I think one of the key takeaways that I started with, and I'd like to leave you with again, is to really just focus on the opportunity that we have to take advantage of having the existing mine permits in place, having the infrastructure in place, really understanding what the characteristics of these deposits to get the South Crofty deposit back into production, and what that could mean for a long-term mine life. We think there's tremendous opportunity to extend that mine life, so that we may be sort of looking at a 14-year mine life right now in the PEA, but we believe that ultimately this is, we get underground, we get back into production on this project, and it will be open for decades to come, just on the back of the nature of the mineralization, the history of mining over 400 years in the South Crofty area in particular. So there's a lot to take in with the PEA, but it's a really good platform for us to get started with. So there will be the technical report put on file on CDR Plus within 45 days of today, which was the date of the news release. That report is well underway, and it'll have more information and to flesh out some of the details of the study. But if you have other questions, we're all available. We have an investor hub through our website that you can ask additional questions for. So please, if questions come to mind, we're available to try and answer them, and just stay tuned for additional news as we move things along here. Thanks very much.
Ken, that's great. And thank you all for updating investors this afternoon. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the management team can really better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Cornish Metals, we would like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, so good afternoon to you all.